still remember the metallic tang in my mouth the moment they told me I'd been chosen. The words came from Mr. Thompson, speaking in that dreary monotone that every civil servant seems to perfect after years stuck behind a desk. Mr. James Carter, ID 47BX, 2021. You have been selected for Her Majesty's Special Service. He didn't even glance up from his tablet. His augmented eye flicked softly, scanning data, making a sound like the grinding gears in the factory where I'd worked for over a decade. I stood barefoot on the cold concrete floor of the processing room, the chill creeping through my socks, trying to grasp what those words meant. Special service. I'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone in Ashbourne knew there were people who vanished into the royal palace's depths and never resurfaced. We told ourselves they were chosen, blessed, serving a purpose beyond our understanding. We told ourselves whatever we had to, just to get some sleep. The copper taste in my mouth intensified. I'd bitten my tongue. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice small in the echoing room. I'm just a factory worker, maintaining conveyor belts in Sector 9. No special skills, no training. No mistake. Mr. Thompson finally looked up, his tired brown eye surrounded by pale skin, as if he hadn't seen sunlight in years. Your genetics, aptitude tests, psychological profile, all cleared. Report to Sanctum 33 at 7 p.m. for induction. The room seemed to shrink. Institutional beige walls pressed in. Fluorescent lights hummed in a way that made my teeth ache. I noticed my shallow breathing, the sterile air tasting of metal and cleaning fluid. What exactly is special service? I asked. For a heartbeat, something like pity flickered in his eyes. You'll be the light that guides England through the darkness, he said. No greater honor. Then he went back to his screen. Conversation over. The trip from the processing room to my flat took 47 minutes on the transit tubes. 47 minutes staring at my reflection in the scratched plastic window, trying to reconcile the face staring back at me with the words I'd just heard. Chosen. Special service. Terms that felt alien, like a language once known but long forgotten. My reflection was unremarkable. 34 years old, brown hair thinning at the crown, gray eyes that held neither wisdom nor strength. A faded scar ran down my left cheek from a factory accident a couple of years back. Hands calloused from years of manual labor, nails stained with grease no amount of scrubbing could fix. Just a regular bloke living a regular life in Ashbourne, or so I thought. My flat was exactly as I'd left it. A cramped room, 8 by 6 feet, with a thin bed, a small desk, a kettle and a tiny bathroom. Institutional beige walls again, making the place feel more like a waiting room than a home. On the desk sat a single photo frame, cracked at the edge, holding a picture of my mum and dad on their wedding day, decades ago. They smiled with that hopeful kind of joy that seemed so distant now. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at their faces. What would they think of their son's special service? Proud? Terrified? Truth was, I didn't know what I felt. The hours crawled by. I tried to eat the bland ration, some synthetic meat substitute that tasted like cardboard dipped in ash, but my appetite was gone. I pulled out a battered book from the drawer, an old copy of the Imperial Primer. But the words swam before my eyes. Tried to sleep, but all I could do was count the imperfections on the ceiling tiles. 63 cracks, 12 water stains, 1 tile slightly askew. At 7 p.m. sharp, I was ready. The transit capsule that took me to Sanctum 33 was unlike anything I'd experienced. Most tube rides were about function, crammed with commuters in the rush of the city. This was different. The capsule was smaller, lined with real oak panels, not the usual plastic or metal. Brass fittings gleamed softly, and the scent of sandalwood incense filled the air, a strange comfort amid my nerves. 7 others shared the capsule with me, all picked for this special service. We sat in silence, each wrestling with our own fears. Across from me was a young woman, maybe 25, pale and slender, her posture slightly stooped as if life had already worn her down. Her hands trembled around a small pendant shaped like a lion, the royal crest. When she caught me staring, she gave a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emily Grant," she whispered. Data Analyst, Sector 12.
James Carte, Irraplia, Maintenança Technician, Saktono.
An older man beside her cleared his throat. His hands bore scars, dark and rough from years in the steelworks. Marcus Blake, he said, voice gravelly. Worked the furnaces for 38 years. Thought I'd die in the factory. Didn't expect this. One by one, the others introduced themselves. Helen Walker, barely 18, from the textile mills. Dominic Hayes, mid-40s, with a mechanical arm. Jordan Lee, a nervous teenager pulled from a youth brigade. Sarah Thompson, a stout woman weathered by years tending the city's greenhouses. Ordinary people, the backbone of England's industry. No heroes here. Just folks somehow flagged by the system. Anyone know what special service actually means? Dominic asked, his mechanical fingers drumming nervously. No one answered. Finally, Marcus spoke. My granddad used to tell stories. Back before the wars, the purges. Said there were places down in the palace where they fed souls to machines. Turned people into batteries for God knows what. That's just superstition, Emily said, though her voice lacked conviction. The Queen protects us. Whatever we do, it serves a purpose. All service serves a purpose, Helen murmured. Doesn't mean we survive it. The capsule began to descend faster. Outside the windows, the architecture changed. The grimy concrete corridors gave way to polished stone, Gothic arches soaring overhead, carved with strange symbols that seemed to shift when you looked directly. The air grew heavier, thick with incense and the ozone smell of ancient machinery. We were entering the true heart of the palace, where technology and faith merged into something almost alive. Servo-sculls, small flying devices shaped like human skulls, floated past, their red eyes glowing. Chambers lined with massive, unknowable machines passed by, pipes thick as hallways snaking fluids glowing with their own light. Everywhere, the royal crest, the lion with its fierce, watchful eyes, was carved, painted, and etched. But down here, the lion looked less like a guardian and more like a predator ready to pounce. The descent felt endless. We passed foundries glowing like miniature suns, libraries where drones inscribed data onto ancient parchment, rooms filled with vat-grown creatures I dared not look at too closely. The deeper we went, the more oppressive it became. The weight of centuries of faith and technology pressed down like a physical force. Finally, the capsule hissed to a stop. Beyond the doors stretched a corridor lined with statues of saints I didn't recognize. Faces twisted in agony and ecstasy, hands reaching for something unseen. Flickering lights cast dancing shadows that made the figures seem alive. Citizens! A voice called from the shadows. Disembark. Follow. Do not speak unless spoken to. A figure stepped forward, clad in crimson robes, face hidden behind a brass mask shaped like a human skull. His movements were precise, mechanical. Behind him, others waited silent, still as the statues. We followed them through endless halls where the air thickened with sanctity and electricity. The hum of generators, chants of priests, the whisper of servo-sculls above. Beneath it all, a low thrum, like the heartbeat of something vast and terrible. We passed checkpoints guarded by soldiers with mechanical limbs, scanning us with devices I couldn't name. Each checkpoint took us further from the world I'd known, closer to whatever fate awaited in the shadows. The corridors shifted again. Gothic arches gave way to rough-hewn stone, carvings that hurt to look at, faces that seemed to watch us, words in dead languages. The air grew almost liquid, making each breath a labor. Temperatures swung wildly, scorching heat giving way to bone-deep cold. Lights flickered, sometimes plunging us into darkness. In one of these blackouts, I heard a sound that froze my blood. A scream so low, so filled with anguish, it squeezed my soul. Then the lights returned, the procession continued, but that scream stayed with me. At last, we reached a massive archway guarded by two golden-armored sentinels, silent and still but radiating a presence that stole my breath. These weren't soldiers, they were legends made real, perfect, and terrifying. Beyond lay a circular chamber with a dome lost in shadow. Walls lined with alcoves, each holding a throne. dozens of them, arranged in rings around a raised dais. At the center stood a throne unlike any other, carved from black obsidian that swallowed light, cables and tubes snaking into the floor and walls. Crystal structures grew from its arms and back like tumors pulsing with eerie light. Connected to these lesser thrones were people, alive but not. Their chests rose and fell, but their eyes were rolled back, blank. Tubes and needles pierced their bodies, crystalline filaments reaching out like hungry fingers, connecting them to the central throne. Not dead, something worse. Part of the machine. One of the preparatory chambers for special service. The masked priest intoned, voice hollow and distant. Here, the faithful are transformed. Individual existence ends. True purpose begins. Emily began to sob quietly. Marcus took her hand, trembling. Jordan's face went pale, mouth agape at the sight. What happens to them? Helen whispered. The priest turned his mask toward her. They become part of something greater. Their life force, psychic potential, souls, channeled into the great work. They sustain the light that guides England through darkness. The weight of his words crashed over me. The light was real. The beacon that helped our ships navigate the stormy seas of space, keeping chaos at bay. But it was fueled by sacrifice. Human souls burned each day to keep the light alive. 1,000 souls a day, the priest said flatly. The price of survival. I swallowed hard. How do you choose? Dominic asked, voice shaking. Genetics, psychic potential, psychological stability, physical condition, age. Algorithms weigh thousands of factors to select the best candidates. Best suited to die, I thought bitterly. And if we refuse? Sarah's voice was steely. The priest's mask turned mechanically. Refusal is impossible. The Queen's will cannot be denied. Acceptance brings peace. Resistance brings only suffering. The outcome is the same. I looked around the chamber, taking in the rows of occupied thrones. People like me, reduced to empty shells feeding a terrible machine. The central throne is different, I said. Indeed, the priest replied. It channels the combined psychic energy, houses the intelligence coordinating this process. What intelligence? For once, his voice faltered. A fragment of the Queen's consciousness, severed and bound here, changed by exposure to this place, by witnessing millennia of sacrifice. Chills ran down my spine. A piece of the monarch's mind trapped here, watching as thousands died, day after day. What had it become? Your turn will come, the priest said, gesturing to the waiting thrones. Emily was first. She walked slowly, clutching her pendant until her knuckles were white. When she sat, she looked back at us with eyes wide with terror. Tell them, she whispered. I served willingly. I died with honor. But no one would tell. Needles pierced her arms, tubes connected to neck and skull. Crystals reached out, and her body convulsed as if struck by lightning. Her scream filled the chamber, agonizing and endless. Then silence. Her eyes rolled back, blank. Connection established. Soul integration at 97%. Psychic resonance within parameters. The priest announced. Emily Grant ceased to exist as an individual, becoming a living battery fueling the great machine. Marcus went next, stoic as ever. Worked with fire all my life, he muttered. Fitting I become fire in the end. Each transformation was unique, but the result the same, consciousness dissolved into the greater whole. Helen, Dominic, Jordan, Sarah all fell one by one. Sarah's transformation was the most violent. Her readings fluctuated wildly, as if part of her still fought. Finally, it was my turn. The throne was warm as I sat, alive beneath me, like flesh rather than stone or metal. As restraints closed around me, I glimpsed the central throne. Within its crystalline matrix, a face shifted, human but twisted by millennia. The Queen's trapped consciousness, watching, burdened by countless deaths. The first needle pierced my skin. The pain wasn't just physical. It was my very essence being torn apart, sorted, prepared. Memories sifted by an alien intelligence. My first day at the factory, the pride of fixing a stubborn conveyor, the girl I loved for 3 perfect weeks before she was transferred, the rare taste of roast beef on Boxing Day, the sound of rain on my flat's roof. But alongside the cold analysis was something else. Older, more human, infinitely sad. "I'm sorry," the voice whispered into my mind. "So very sorry." "Why?" I asked, though unsure if the word was spoken or thought. Images flooded my mind. The galaxy is seen from the palace. Millions of worlds spinning in the dark. Ships navigating treacherous cosmic storms by the light we sustained. Children born under alien skies. Humanity spreading across the stars. And pressing in from all sides. Enemies waiting to snuff out that spark. Chaos fleets gathering in the void. Warbands of orcs sweeping through space. Monstrous hive ships devouring star clusters. Ancient tomb worlds awakening. And worse, things that feed on reality itself. The choice was stark. Sacrifice the few to save the many, or watch everything fall into oblivion. "The price is too high," I protested as my sense of self frayed. "Yes," the voice agreed, "but the alternative is worse. Scenes of ships lost in the void, worlds cut off and conquered, civilizations shattered, souls trapped in eternal torment. This is the choice we face," the voice said, heavy with millennia of guilt. I understood then the Queen's consciousness was not cold or calculating. It bore the impossible burden of choosing who lived and who died every day, remembering every name, every face, enduring because no one else could. "Will it ever end?" I asked, fading fast. "I don't know," it whispered. "I hope so, I pray. But hope isn't enough. Only sacrifice is." My individuality slipped away, absorbed into the greater whole. But instead of emptiness, I felt something new: warmth, connection, purpose. We were becoming part of something larger than ourselves. The others were there too. Emily's sharp mind, Marcus's steady presence, Helen, Dominic, Jordan, Sarah, all woven into the great tapestry of sacrifice. And there were millions more, from all across England, from all walks of life, united in this eternal service. Our light guided ships safely through the void. It was the beacon that kept hope alive. But that light was changing, and the true test was yet to come. The chamber's cold stone walls seemed to close in tighter as I settled into the throne, the weight of what was happening pressing down like a physical force. My fingers twitched against the smooth armrests, which felt almost alive beneath my skin, pulsing with a rhythm that matched my own heartbeat, or perhaps something far older. The room was filled with a low hum, a vibration that crawled beneath my ribs and settled deep in my bones. The golden light of the central throne flickered, casting elongated shadows that danced across the faces of the others still seated, now more machine than human. Their vacant eyes stared ahead, yet somehow I felt their presence, like echoes trapped in glass. A sudden sharp hiss drew my attention. Tubes, needles, and crystalline filaments began to snake from hidden compartments within the throne, reaching toward me with a slow, deliberate intent. The sensation was not unpleasant at first, almost like gentle caresses, before the cold steel of the needles bit into my skin, anchoring me in place. "Brace yourself," intoned a voice from somewhere above, muffled yet authoritative. I couldn't tell if it came from the robed priests or the throne itself. "Integration begins now." As the crystalline filaments connected to my temples, I felt a strange tug deep in my mind, like the gentle pull of a tide drawing me away from the shore of my thoughts. The memories I cherished, Sunday walks in the park, the warmth of a summer afternoon, the first time I held a pint at the local pub, all began to shimmer and blur. A flicker of panic surged, but it was quickly stifled by a wave of calm that rolled through my consciousness, as if I were drowning and suddenly found breath beneath the water. I tried to focus on the woman seated opposite me, Emily Grant. She was dressed in a simple yet elegant navy blue blouse, the faint shimmer of silk catching the light with every small movement. Her dark hair was pulled back into a loose knot at the nape of her neck, strands escaping to frame her pale face. Around her neck hung the delicate royal crest pendant, now cold against her skin. There was a vulnerability about her, a fragile beauty that made my heart ache. Despite the sterile, oppressive surroundings, she seemed like a lost girl trapped far from home. I wondered if she remembered her family, if she feared what was coming. I caught her eye, and for a brief second, she smiled. A faint, trembling curve of lips that spoke of defiance more than acceptance. Then her body convulsed violently, the crystalline filaments pulsing with a fierce light. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the vast chamber, a scream that seemed to echo in my very soul. The horror of it pierced me, and I had to remind myself to breathe. That scream was the price. Our price. The voice spoke again, calm and mechanical. Soul integration at 97%. Psychic resonance within parameters. Subject ceases to exist as individual. Emily's eyes rolled back, and she slumped forward, lifeless yet somehow alive, a conduit for the great machine's insatiable hunger. I swallowed hard, feeling my own throat go dry. The weight of what was to come settled even deeper. Marcus Blake was next. The old steelworker's face was weathered, his thick hands trembling slightly as he took his place beside me. Clad in a worn leather jacket and heavy boots, the smell of coal dust seemed to cling to him still. "I've lived with fire all my life," he muttered, voice rough. "Fitting to become part of it now." His transformation was quieter but no less final. The needles found their marks swiftly, and the crystalline filaments spread over his skin like frost. His eyes glazed over, and with a final breath, he joined the chorus of the lost. One by one, the others followed: Helen Walker, a girl whose youthful face was haunted by shadows; Dominic Hayes, whose mechanical arm twitched nervously; Jordan Lee, the boy whose tears never stopped flowing; and Sarah Thompson, the defiant woman whose fierce glare never wavered even as the machine claimed her. Each transformation was unique, a private agony shared in the silence of the chamber. The crystalline filaments pulsed with eerie light, weaving a web that connected us all to the central throne. As I watched, a sudden flicker caught my eye, a shadow moving within the blackness of the central throne's crystalline matrix. A face, distorted and ancient, yet unmistakably human. The fragment of the Queen's consciousness, trapped and transformed by millennia of watching death and sacrifice. Its eyes met mine, and I felt a cold sorrow deeper than any ocean. A whisper echoed in my mind, barely audible yet filled with the weight of countless lifetimes. "I am sorry. I am so very sorry." The words settled over me like a shroud. I wanted to ask why this endless sacrifice, why the endless pain, but before the thought could fully form, the needles slid deeper, and the filaments tightened their hold. Memories flooded me. A torrent of images and sensations ripped from the depths of my soul. The smell of rain on cobblestones, the taste of a proper Sunday roast, the laughter of old friends, the warmth of a lover's embrace. All being catalogued, harvested, consumed. And yet, beneath the cold calculus of the process, I sensed something else. A flicker of humanity, a desperate hope. The same hope that had driven my ancestors to endure the darkest nights. The hope that one day this sacrifice might mean something more. As the chamber's lights dimmed, and the low hum grew into a roar, I knew my journey had only just begun. Because beyond these walls, beyond this chamber of shadows and light, something was stirring. A secret whispered in the corridors of power. A mystery that could unravel everything we thought we knew. And in that moment, as my own consciousness began to blur and shift, I realized one terrifying truth. The Queen's light was not just a beacon. It was a prison, and I was both its prisoner and its prisoner-keeper. The darkness was waiting, and it was hungry. The dull throb of the chamber's machinery echoed in my ears as my mind struggled to grasp the shifting tides of consciousness. The crystalline filaments crawling over my skin sent icy shivers through my veins, their glow flickering like distant stars in a cold, indifferent sky. It was neither pain nor comfort. It was something else entirely. A strange liminal space between existence and oblivion. I caught myself clinging to fragments of memory, desperate to anchor my fading self to the world I once knew. A laugh shared with a mate down at the pub, the scent of rain on the cobbled streets of Ashbourne. the gentle warmth of a summer's evening fading into dusk. But those moments slipped through my fingers like smoke, each one dissolving under the weight of what I was becoming. Then, through the haze, a sudden sharp clarity stabbed at me. A whisper of a name. Emily. I turned my fading gaze to the woman beside me, now more statue than human, her delicate features frozen in a silent scream. Her navy blouse was stained, the silk torn where the crystalline filaments had bitten into her flesh. The royal crest pendant she'd clutched so tightly now lay cold against her chest, a fragile relic of the life she'd surrendered. I tried to smile at her, but it felt hollow. "You're not alone," I wanted to say, but the words caught in a throat that no longer belonged fully to me. A soft shuffle drew my attention to Marcus Blake, the steelworker, seated a few thrones away. His scarred hands twitched, as if recalling a lifetime forged in furnaces and sweat. Despite the cold embrace of the machine, his eyes held a stubborn flicker of defiance. "Fitting," he'd said, "to become fire in the end." I wondered if he felt the same now, trapped between flame and ash. The chamber's dim light pulsed, casting long shadows that writhed and twisted like living things. I became aware of the others, the youthful Helen Walker, her pale face etched with quiet despair. Dominic Hayes, his mechanical arm twitching involuntarily. Jordan Lee, the boy whose tears had dried but whose fear lingered. And Sarah Thompson, whose fierce glare had not dimmed, even as the machine claimed her. Each was caught in their own private agony, a symphony of sacrifice and surrender. Then the hum deepened, a vibrating pulse that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the chamber. My vision blurred, and a new presence made itself known. A cold, alien intelligence weaving through the threads of my mind. It was the Queen's consciousness, fragmented and imprisoned within the black throne at the center of this infernal machine. A face flickered before me, ancient, sorrowful, and twisted by millennia of watching death unfold. Its eyes met mine, and in that gaze, I felt the unbearable weight of endless sacrifice. "I bear your burden," it whispered, voice like wind through hollow stone. "I carry the pain of 1,000 souls, and yet I endure." I wanted to ask why. Why was this necessary? Why must so many fade to fuel the light? But before I could speak, the voice continued, a litany of sorrow and resolve. "The light guides ships through the warp, keeps chaos at bay, preserves humanity's fragile flame. Without it, all is lost. The sacrifices are terrible, but the alternative is darkness deeper than death." Images flooded my mind. Vast fleets swallowed by the void, worlds consumed by madness, the screams of the fallen echoing through endless night. "You are chosen," the voice intoned, "not to die but to live beyond death, to become part of the eternal flame." A shiver ran through me as the crystalline filaments pulsed, syncing with the rhythm of the throne. I felt myself slipping, dissolving into something vast and unknowable. Yet, amid the terror, a strange warmth blossomed, a connection to the countless souls entwined with mine. Emily, Marcus, Helen, Dominic, Jordan, Sarah, all part of a greater whole. The chamber's hum crescendoed, then began to fade, replaced by a profound stillness. And then, a new sound, a distant whisper, barely audible but unmistakably there. A secret murmured through the corridors of power, a thread of hope tangled with dread. Someone somewhere was fighting back. A spark of defiance flickered beyond the shadows. But the darkness was not idle. It was gathering strength. And I knew our journey into the heart of the machine was far from over. Because the throne's light, terrible and radiant, hid a secret yet to be revealed. And that secret would change everything. The silence that followed felt heavier than any noise, a suffocating stillness that wrapped around the chamber like a shroud. My senses, dulled and stretched thin by the interfaces threading through my mind, struggled to discern where I ended and the machine began. The crystalline filaments pulsed softly against my skin, their eerie light casting long, wavering reflections on the cold stone walls. I tried to hold onto the last fragments of my identity, clutching at memories like a man drowning in a storm reaching for driftwood. The smell of damp earth after rain in Ashbourne. The warm flicker of laughter from the pub's hearth. The the gentle brush of a hand I once held. Someone whose name had slipped just beyond reach. A faint chuckle broke the oppressive quiet. Not my own, though I wished it were. Somewhere deeper, beneath layers of pain and fear, a spark of dark humor flickered. Not exactly the holiday retreat you imagined. Eh? The voice teased, dry and sardonic. I blinked, confused. Was it my mind playing tricks? Or some fragment of the Queen's fractured consciousness trying to lighten the unbearable weight? The voice continued. You ever wonder if any of those suits back in Westminster would survive a day down here? I bet half of 'em would fold faster than a deck of cards at the first sign of a stiff breeze. A wry smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Even in this place of shadows and sacrifice, a little levity was a strange kind of medicine. But there was no time for comfort. The chamber's atmosphere shifted again, the air thickening with an electric charge that prickled my skin. Images flashed in my mind's eye. Distant worlds under siege, starships tearing through warp storms, shadows creeping across once bright colonies. The Queen's voice returned, solemn and heavy. There is a new force rising beyond the veil. Something ancient, something unseen by mortal eyes. It stirs in the void, drawn by the beacon we sustain. I felt a shudder ripple through the collective consciousness we had become, a ripple of unease spreading like wildfire. The light we fed was not just a guide, it was a beacon, and beacons attract more than friends. A sudden flash of a memory, a news report I'd half ignored, speaking of strange signals from the outer colonies, unexplained disappearances, whispers of a new threat growing in the darkness between stars. I tried to focus, but the throne's tendrils tightened their grip. My thoughts fragmented, drifting like leaves on a restless wind. Then, a flicker of movement caught my attention. Across the chamber, shadows gathered near the central throne. Figures cloaked in crimson robes, their brass masks gleaming in the dim light. Tech priests of the Mechanicum, moving with mechanical precision, their voices low and chanting in a language I could barely comprehend. One stepped forward, raising a hand adorned with intricate cybernetic implants. The sacred service must evolve, he intoned. The old ways no longer suffice against the darkness encroaching upon the Imperium. I sensed urgency in his words, a call to change, to adaptation. But change here came at a terrible cost. The tech priest's gaze locked onto me, or what remained of me, and a chill ran down my spine. You will be the harbinger, he declared. The instrument of transformation. My heart, or whatever pulse now beat within me, skipped a beat. Harbinger, instrument. The word sounded like a sentence, a fate sealed. The crystalline filaments surged with renewed energy, sending waves of sensation through my body. Images flooded my mind. Firestorms on distant planets, fleets clashing in the void, the once mighty Imperium strained to breaking point. Yet amid the chaos, a single thread of hope remained. A whispered legend of a lost technology, buried deep within the ancient archives of Ashbourne's forgotten catacombs. They said it could alter the very fabric of the astral light, change its nature from a beacon of sacrifice to a shield of salvation. But such power came with a price, and enemies who would kill to possess it. As the chamber's hum rose to a fever pitch, I realized the true battle was only beginning. For the light that saved humanity could just as easily consume it. And in the shadows beyond, something was watching, waiting, hungry for the reckoning to come. The chamber's oppressive silence shattered as the hum of the central throne intensified, vibrating through my very bones. The crystalline filaments wrapped tighter around me, their cold glow flickering like distant lightning in a storm I couldn't escape. Somewhere deep in the shadows, the tech priest's mechanical chant wove an eerie rhythm, punctuated by the occasional hiss of pneumatic joints and the soft clatter of servo-sculls drifting overhead. I tried to focus, to grasp the fading threads of my own thoughts, but the machine had other plans. Images and sensations flooded my mind with dizzying speed. The clatter of forge fires, the scent of burning coal, the rumble of distant thunder over Ashbourne's rooftops. Then, abruptly, the memories twisted and darkened. Flashes of starships shattered in warp storms, colonies consumed by unseen horrors, screams muffled beneath layers of static. A voice, cold and unyielding, echoed in my mind, the fragment of the Queen's consciousness trapped within the throne. The ancient protocols have been reactivated. It intoned gravely. The time has come to awaken the Guardian. I felt a shiver ripple through me, a mixture of awe and dread. The Guardian, the whispered legend spoken of only in hushed tones among the oldest tech priests. A device rumored to be capable of reshaping the astral light itself. As if sensing my thoughts, the tech priest's voice cut through the haze. The Guardian will turn the tide, but its activation requires sacrifice beyond that which has come before. Sacrifice. The word hung heavy in the stale air. I had already given everything, yet it seemed the cost would only grow. Suddenly, the chamber's walls pulsed with a deep, resonant vibration. Ancient runes etched into the stone began to glow, bathing the room in a spectral blue light. The air grew thick with charged particles, making every breath a labor. From the shadows emerged a figure unlike the others. A woman draped in flowing crimson robes embroidered with gold filigree. Her face partially obscured by a delicate brass mask shaped like a hawk's beak. Her eyes, sharp and bright beneath the mask, locked onto me with unsettling intensity. "I am Lady Evelyn," she declared, her voice both commanding and melodic. "Keeper of the lost archives, guardian of the secret that may save us all." Her presence was magnetic, a blend of grace and steel that made the air itself seem to pulse. She stepped forward, fingertips tracing the intricate carvings along the throne's edge. "You have been chosen not just to serve, but to carry the seed of change," she said softly. "Within the forgotten vaults beneath Ashbourne lies the key to the Guardian, a relic from a time when humanity's light burned brighter, unbound by sacrifice." Hope flickered within me, a fragile flame in the endless night. "But beware," Lady Evelyn warned. "The darkness hunts this knowledge. Shadows conspire to snuff out the spark before it can ignite." As she spoke, images flooded my mind. Shadowy figures slipping through ancient catacombs, whispered deals struck in the dead of night, agents of chaos weaving webs of deceit. The chamber's hum grew louder, the crystalline filaments pulsing in tandem with the rising tension. I realized then that my fate was entwined with this secret. To reclaim the lost knowledge, to awaken the Guardian, would mean stepping beyond the throne's cold embrace, and into a world of danger and deception. "Will you accept this burden?" Lady Evelyn asked, her gaze piercing. "Will you fight for a future beyond sacrifice?" The question hung in the charged air, heavy with consequence. A faint smile touched my lips, despite the fear knotting my stomach. "I will," I whispered. The chamber trembled, lights flickering as if in response. The journey ahead would be perilous. But for the first time since my selection, I felt something I hadn't dared to hope for: agency, and the promise of a dawn beyond the endless night. The chamber's shifting lights cast long, flickering shadows across Lady Evelyn's masked face as she stepped closer, her voice lowering to a whisper that still carried the weight of command. "To reach the lost archives beneath Ashbourne, you must first pass through the Vale of Echoes, an ancient labyrinth where memory and reality intertwine." I swallowed hard, the cold grip of the crystalline filaments tightening, as if warning me against such a bold promise. "A labyrinth?" I managed, my voice cracking with disbelief. "Why would such a place exist beneath the city? And why now?" She tilted her head ever so slightly, the golden embroidery on her robes catching the glow of the chamber's eerie light. "Because the past never truly dies. It waits, buried beneath the foundations of the present, guarding secrets that some would kill to keep hidden." I glanced around the chamber, at the vacant faces of the others fused to their thrones, their individual lives extinguished like candles snuffed out by a cruel wind. "And what happens to those who enter this veil?" Lady Evelyn's eyes darkened beneath her mask. "Many never return, their minds lost to the whispers of forgotten sins and buried regrets. Only those with unyielding will and purpose survive." A shudder crawled down my spine. The thought of losing what little remained of myself was terrifying. Yet the alternative, the endless sacrifice, the slow dissolution into the machine, was no choice at all. She reached into the folds of her robes and produced a small, ornate key etched with arcane symbols. This will unlock the entrance to the vault beneath Ashbourne's cathedral. There, the guardian waits. My fingers closed around the cold metal, its weight anchoring me to a new destiny. And the darkness? I asked. Who hunts this knowledge? Her voice dropped to a grim murmur. Agents of the Voidborn. A cult sworn to unravel the astral light and usher in eternal chaos. They will stop at nothing. The name sent a cold wave of dread through me. I'd heard whispers of the Voidborn. Shadowy figures spreading discord, their influence seeping into the highest echelons of power. A sudden clang echoed through the chamber, the heavy doors rattling as if buffeted by an unseen force. The tech priest's chants faltered, their masked faces turning toward the noise. My time is short, Lady Evelyn said urgently. You must move quickly. I will guide you as far as I can, but beyond this point, the path is yours alone. The crystalline filaments pulsed violently, and I felt the machine's grip loosening, its insatiable hunger momentarily sated by the promise of change. With a final nod, Lady Evelyn turned toward a narrow corridor bathed in shadow. I rose, no longer a prisoner bound to a throne, but a man on the brink of a perilous quest. As we stepped into the darkness, I cast one last glance back at the chamber, the throne's cold heart pulsing faintly in the distance, a reminder of the sacrifice still demanded. Outside, the night air was thick with the scent of rain and smoke, the city's ancient spires silhouetted against a storm-darkened sky. The streets of Ashbourne seemed both familiar and alien, shadows stretching like fingers across cobblestones worn smooth by centuries. Lady Evelyn moved with purpose, her robes whispering secrets with every step. The vault lies beneath the old cathedral, she explained. But beware, the veil is no ordinary maze. It feeds on your fears, your regrets, twisting them into phantoms that seek to trap you forever. I swallowed again, the ornate key heavy in my palm. I'm ready, I said, though uncertainty gnawed at the edges of my resolve. She offered a rare, fleeting smile. Good, because the fate of the astral light, and perhaps all of humanity, depends on what you find there. As the cathedral's ancient doors creaked open before us, a cold wind swept through the entrance, carrying with it whispers of forgotten secrets and the promise of dangers yet unseen. And in the darkness beyond, the labyrinth awaited, ready to claim its next victim. The cathedral's heavy oak doors groaned as we pushed them open, revealing a shadowed nave bathed in flickering candlelight. Dust motes floated like tiny specters in the stale air, and the scent of aged wood and cold stone settled heavily around us. The stained glass windows, fractured and faded by centuries of neglect, cast kaleidoscopic shards of color onto the cracked marble floor. Lady Evelyn's footsteps echoed softly as she led me toward the altar, her brass mask catching the faint glow and turning her into a spectral sentinel of a forgotten age. The ornate key felt like a weight of destiny pressed into my palm, its cold metal biting through my gloves. There, she whispered, pointing to a worn tapestry hanging behind the altar. Its intricate embroidery depicted a lion entwined with serpents, the symbol of a long-lost order sworn to protect the realm from darkness. Beneath the tapestry, an ancient stone door was set flush with the wall, its surface covered in runes that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. Lady Evelyn knelt, sliding the key into a hidden lock. With a low rumble, the door shuddered open, revealing a narrow stairwell spiraling down into pitch black. Beyond this lies the Vale of Echoes, she said, her voice barely audible. Remember, the labyrinth feeds on your mind. Trust your will. Trust your heart. I swallowed, steeling myself before stepping into the darkness. The air was cool and damp, carrying whispers that seemed to curl around my ears like smoke. With every step downward, the shadows thickened, twisting and writhing as if alive. The walls seemed to breathe, ancient stone pulsing faintly beneath my fingertips. Suddenly, the corridor split into a maze of passages, each lined with flickering lanterns casting long, dancing shadows. A voice echoed softly, familiar yet distant, the laughter of my childhood friend, the warmth of a mother's embrace. but the smiles twisted into sneers, the warmth curdling into ice. The veil was weaving its web. I forced my breath steady, pushing forward, ignoring the phantoms that reached for me with cold, spectral hands. A sudden gust extinguished my lantern, plunging me into darkness. Heart pounding, I fumbled in my pocket for a flare, the red glow cutting through the black like a beacon. Ahead, a figure emerged. A woman in a flowing black dress, her eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. She smiled, a slow, knowing curl of lips. "Lost, are we?" she purred, stepping closer. "Or perhaps searching for what you fear most?" I tightened my grip on the flare. "Who are you?" "An echo," she whispered. "A fragment of your doubts and regrets. But I'm not the only one waiting." From the shadows, more figures emerged. Faces from my past, twisted by fear and guilt. The girl I loved and lost, the friend I betrayed, the voice that told me I wasn't enough. The labyrinth was laying bare my soul, stripping away the layers I'd built to protect myself. But then, a steady warmth bloomed in my chest. A memory of laughter shared in a sunlit park, the feel of honest friendship, the simple joy of being known and accepted. I forced myself to meet the woman's gaze. "You're just shadows," I said, voice firm despite the tremor. "I'm more than my fears." Her smile faltered, the shadows around her flickering like dying embers. With renewed resolve, I pushed past the phantoms, deeper into the maze. The path twisted and turned, each corner revealing new trials, whispers of failure, visions of loss, echoes of pain. Yet with each step, my grip on reality strengthened. Finally, I reached a vast chamber, its walls lined with ancient tomes and glowing crystals. At the center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a small, intricately carved box, the heart of the lost archives. As I approached, the air shimmered, and a voice filled the chamber, a chorus of countless souls, singing a haunting hymn of sacrifice and hope. I reached out, fingers trembling, and lifted the box. In that moment, the labyrinth sighed, and the shadows recoiled. But beyond the chamber's walls, I sensed the darkness gathering still, closer, more relentless than before. The real battle was only beginning. The carved box felt unervingly warm in my hands, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer beneath my fingers like living script. The chamber around me pulsed softly, the glow from the crystals casting prismatic light that danced across the ancient tomes lining the walls. The hymn of countless voices filled the air, a solemn, sorrowful melody that spoke of sacrifice, endurance, and hope intertwined. Lady Evelyn's voice broke through the reverie, steady and urgent. "This is the core of the lost archives, the key to awakening the guardian. But be warned, the power within is as dangerous as it is ancient." I nodded, heart pounding with a mixture of awe and dread. "How do we protect it? How do we keep it from the Voidborn?" She met my gaze, her eyes sharp beneath the hawk-shaped mask. "We must move quickly. The labyrinth will not surrender its secrets without a fight." The moment I secured the box, the chamber trembled, a low, guttural rumble that shook dust from the vaulted ceiling. The glowing runes along the walls flared violently before dimming to an ominous red. Suddenly, the air grew thick with a choking mist, curling like smoke and swallowing the light. From the haze emerged figures cloaked in tattered black robes, faces hidden beneath deep hoods, their hands crackling with dark energy. The Voidborn, their presence turned the chamber into a battlefield of shadows and light. I gripped the box tighter, feeling the ancient power thrumming within, a fragile beacon against the encroaching darkness. Lady Evelyn raised her hand, chanting in a language that resonated with the chamber's very stones. Crystalline shards erupted from the walls, forming barriers of blinding light that momentarily held the Voidborn at bay. But they advanced relentlessly, their voices rising in a discordant chorus of curses and promises of oblivion. One stepped forward, a figure whose eyes gleamed like burning coals beneath his hood. "You cannot hide the truth forever," he spat. "The astral light will burn, and from its ashes, chaos will reign." I felt a surge of defiance. Not while I stand. The battle raged. A clash of ancient power and unyielding will. Light and shadow intertwined in a deadly dance, the chamber shaking with every strike. In the midst of the chaos, the box pulsed, releasing a wave of radiant energy that pushed back the Voidborn. The crystalline barriers shimmered, strengthened by the Guardian's latent power. Lady Evelyn's voice cut through the turmoil. "Now, James, use the key." With trembling hands, I raised the ornate key and pressed it into the box's hidden lock. A resonant hum filled the chamber as the box unfolded, revealing a radiant crystal at its core. A shard of pure, pulsating light. The energy surged through me, filling the labyrinth with a brilliance that banished the shadows. The Voidborn shrieked, retreating into the mists from whence they came. As silence fell, the chamber's glow softened, bathed in the gentle light of the awakened Guardian. But the victory was bittersweet. Lady Evelyn's gaze darkened. "This is only the beginning. The darkness will return, more cunning and cruel than before." I looked down at the crystal shard, its light warm against my palm, a symbol of hope and burden intertwined. Outside, beyond the labyrinth, the city of Ashbourne slept unaware of the war waging beneath its streets. And in the depths of the cosmos, unseen eyes watched, waiting for their moment to strike. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and sacrifice. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I carried a spark of light strong enough to challenge the darkness. And I would fight with everything I had, because some battles were worth the price, and some sacrifices were meant to forge a future. But as I turned to leave, a shadow flickered behind the crystal's glow, a whisper of something not quite human, something watching, waiting, hungry. The glow of the Guardian's crystal filled the chamber with a soft, steady light, casting long shadows that danced across the ancient stone walls. I held the shard carefully, feeling its warmth pulse like a heartbeat in my palm, a fragile beacon amid the encroaching darkness. Lady Evelyn's eyes never left the shifting shadows at the edge of the chamber. The Voidborn may have retreated, but their reach extends far beyond this place, she warned. They have eyes and ears everywhere, and their thirst for the astral light's destruction is insatiable. I nodded, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. The labyrinth behind us had been a crucible, a test of will and spirit. But the real war was only just beginning. We ascended the spiral staircase, the air growing fresher with each step, the distant sounds of the waking city filtering through cracks in the stone. Ashbourne's cobbled streets awaited above, oblivious to the ancient battle raging beneath their feet. Outside, dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and amber. The cool morning air was a balm to my frayed nerves, but the weight of the Guardian's power pressed heavy in my satchel. Lady Evelyn turned to me, her voice low and resolute. "The next phase begins now. We must deliver the Guardian's light to the Citadel, the heart of the Imperium's defense. There, its power can be harnessed to shield humanity from the darkness gathering in the void." I swallowed hard. The Citadel was a fortress of legend, a bastion against the chaos that threatened to consume us all. But reaching it would be no simple task. As we navigated the winding streets, a sudden chill prickled at the back of my neck. From the shadows, figures emerged, cloaked in black, faces obscured beneath hoods, their movements silent and deadly. The Voidborn agents. Before I could react, a sharp blade flashed, slicing through the air where I had stood moments before. Lady Evelyn's hand shot out, intercepting the attack with a shimmering shield of light that crackled and flared. "Run!" she commanded. Adrenaline surged as we sprinted through narrow alleys, the sounds of pursuit close behind. The city blurred around us. Market stalls, shuttered windows, the distant tolling of church bells. We burst into an open square bathed in dawn's glow, but the Voidborn closed in, their numbers overwhelming. Just as despair threatened to seize me, a sudden roar shattered the morning calm. From the rooftops descended figures clad in gleaming armor, knights of the Citadel, their banners emblazoned with the lion's crest. Steel clashed against shadow as the knights engaged our pursuers, buying us precious moments. Lady Evelyn grabbed my arm. "This way," she urged, leading me toward a hidden passage beneath an ancient fountain. Hearts pounding, we slipped into the cool darkness, the sounds of battle fading behind us. As we emerged within the citadel's towering walls, a sense of awe washed over me. Massive stone ramparts rose against the sky, banners fluttering in the breeze. The fortress pulsed with a fierce energy, hope forged in stone and steel. Within its grand hall, the Council of the Light awaited, a gathering of leaders, warriors, and scholars dedicated to humanity's survival. Lady Evelyn stepped forward, presenting the Guardian's crystal. "We bring the key to salvation," she declared. "But time is short, and the darkness looms." The council members exchanged grave looks, their faces etched with weariness and determination. A tall man with silver hair and piercing eyes spoke. "The Guardian's awakening is a beacon to all who would see us fall. We must prepare, for the coming storm will test us beyond any trial before." I felt the weight of the moment settle upon me. The path ahead was fraught with danger, sacrifice, and uncertainty. But with the Guardian's light in our hands, there was hope. And as the council rallied to defend the Imperium's heart, I knew one thing for certain. The darkness would not claim us without a fight. Yet, in the quiet moments before the storm, I caught a flicker of movement from the shadows, a whisper of betrayal. Someone within the citadel watched us with eyes that gleamed like cold steel. And the true enemy was not always the one you expected. The grand hall of the citadel buzzed with tense energy as the Council of the Light gathered around the Guardian's crystal, its radiant glow casting flickering patterns on the stone walls. The air was thick with anticipation, and an undercurrent of unease that gnawed at my nerves. I stood near Lady Evelyn, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon us. Scholars debated arcane theories, generals spoke of troop movements, and priests whispered prayers to ancient gods. Yet beneath all the noise, a silent threat lingered, like a shadow refusing to be banished. The silver-haired leader, Lord Hawthorne, stepped forward, his gaze sharp as a blade. "The Guardian's power must be integrated into the astral light's core. It will strengthen the beacon, shield our ships, and buy us time against the encroaching darkness." As the council nodded in grim agreement, I found my thoughts drifting to the faces I'd left behind. The friends whose memories now lived only in the echoes of the astral light, the sacrifices made in silence and shadow. Then, a sudden chill swept through the hall, extinguishing candles and plunging the room into flickering gloom. A figure stepped from the shadows, a woman cloaked in midnight black, her eyes cold and unreadable beneath a hood. A collective gasp rippled through the council. "Traitor!" Lady Evelyn hissed, stepping between the intruder and the crystal. The woman's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You all cling to hope, but hope is a lie. The darkness is inevitable." With a swift motion, she revealed a concealed blade, its edge shimmering with a malevolent energy. Chaos erupted. Guards surged forward, but the traitor moved with inhuman speed, weaving through the hall like a shadow made flesh. Sparks flew as steel met dark sorcery, the air charged with violence. I drew my own weapon, a simple blade, but one tempered by purpose and resolve. We clashed, her strikes precise and deadly, mine fueled by desperation. The Guardian's crystal pulsed violently, its light flaring as if sensing the peril. In a desperate gambit, I feinted left and drove the blade forward, catching her off guard. The blade pierced her side, and she staggered, a hiss escaping her lips. As she fell, the darkness seemed to recoil, the shadows in the hall retreating like a tide. Breathing heavily, I looked down at the fallen figure, once a trusted ally, now a harbinger of ruin. Lady Evelyn approached, her mask reflecting the crystal's glow. "Betrayal festers even in the brightest light," she said softly. "We must remain vigilant." The council gathered once more, the crisis a stark reminder of the war beyond the walls. Days passed in a blur of preparation. The Guardian's light was woven into the astral light, its power radiating through the vast networks that guided our fleets and guarded our worlds. Ships set sail, shields strengthened, and hope, fragile but fierce, burned brighter. Yet beneath the surface, a new danger stirred. A whisper on the wind, a shadow in the corner of the eye. The darkness was not defeated. It was evolving, and somewhere, deep in the void, a presence awakened. Ancient, hungry, and waiting. As I stood on the battlements of the citadel, gazing into the endless stars, I knew the true test was yet to come. For the light we fought to protect was both our salvation and our curse. And in the quiet between the stars, a voice echoed in my mind, cold and relentless. This is only the beginning. The sky darkened, and the first stars of a new war began to burn. The story was far from over.